Each Premier League club's most creative player this season ranked from worst to best. Let's jump into it. So we did this for the Championship the other day. I thought I couldn't leave you Premier League fans out of it. If you would like to see some more Premier League content popping up on the channel, then do leave a like on today's video. Know we've got plenty of, Forest, Villa, Leeds fans that are subscribed to the channel. So I've looked into the data and I've found each Premier League club's most creative player this season based on their shot creating actions. For reference, a shot creating action is defined as the two offensive actions directly leading to a shot, such as a pass, dribble or drawing a foul, and it makes for an interesting point of comparison to see where each Premier League club's main creator is at this point in the season and how they stack up against each other. Without any further ado though, let's hop into it. Starting out in 20th place, we have Bournemouth Marcus Tavernier coming in with 27 shot creating actions so far this season. Now, this was a really interesting move over the summer. At the time, I was maybe a little bit apprehensive just about the move and stylistically how much would Tavernier be a fit in this Bournemouth side as they look to adapt to the Premier League, but he has been their main creative force so far this season. He also ranks top of the Premier League in terms of successful dribbles this far into the season. 27 successful dribbles, which is more than any other Premier League player, which is seriously impressive. Bournemouth, I think, have surprised quite a few people so far with just how competitive they have actually been, and credit to them for going ahead and doing that. There are still some cause for concern in terms of the underlying numbers. Bournemouth have averaged an XG so far this season of just 0.58 per 90, which is by far the lowest in the Premier League, which would suggest perhaps a regression as the season goes on. But Tavernier has been fantastic so far, but he's starting us out at the bottom of the list. Coming in 19th place, we then have Aston Villa's Ollie Watkins, who's had 29 shot creating actions so far this season, so has been Aston Villa's main source of creativity. Watkins has got 4 goal contributions this far into the year in a Villa side who hasn't been exactly blessed with all too many goals this far into the season. They have averaged less than a goal per game. Obviously, that will be the task that Unai Emery will have to solve now he's in through the door at Villa. Coming in 18th place, we then have Raheem Sterling of Chelsea, who's created 32 shot creating actions so far this season. I do think this sort of speaks to some of the issues that Chelsea have had so far this season. The fact that their most creative player is ranked 18th in this stat in the entirety of the Premier League. But Sterling's been an interesting one so far. He's got 4 goal contributions, 3 goals and an assist. He's been tinkered around with in terms of his positioning, obviously used in a slightly deeper role more recently by Potter. Don't think that's going to be a long-term thing for Sterling. I think you needed to get him as forward and high up the pitch as possible. But Potter himself has had to chop and change most weeks with that Chelsea lineup due to a variety of reasons, really, whether it be injuries, form, change in systems. He's not quite settled on a strongest 11 as of right now, and I think we probably saw the consequences of that with that game against Brighton over the weekend. Coming in 17th place, we then have Morgan Gibbs-White of Nottingham Forest, also coming in with 32 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 3.34 per 90. Now, Morgan Gibbs-White's stats will be slightly boosted by the fact that, he is the main Forest set piece taker. Some decent corner deliveries so far this season have also seen him register 2 assists, but he's an interesting one. I think the expectations were always going to be fairly high on him because of the price tag and the money outlaid on him, but every time I've caught a glimpse of Forest, Morgan Gibbs-White has been one of their more impressive players who I feel like has gradually grown into this season. Each time I see him, I think he gets that little bit better and more involved in their play. There's no doubt that this season has been a massive bumpy ride for Forest, but a player like Gibbs-White I do think has a big future at the City ground. In 16th place, we then have Daniel Podence of Wolves coming in with 39 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 3.69 per 90. Now, as a Preston fan, I sort of feel like I can relate to Wolves fans this season and the serious lack of goals that their fans have seen this far into the year. It's not been pretty stuff from them so far. They currently sit 19th in the Premier League, having only scored 6 goals after their first 13 matches. Podence has been somewhat of a brighter spark in some of their matches. He's scored a couple of goals so far, but yet to actually go ahead and register an assist, although I do think that speaks to maybe some of the other quality that he's playing with at times. Coming in 15th place, we then have Eberechi Eze of Crystal Palace coming in with 40 shot creating actions actions so far this season at an average of 3.7 per 90. The Crystal Palace playmaker has 4 goal contributions to his name so far this season with 2 goals and 2 assists. And while Palace haven't exactly been the most prolific of sides in the Premier League so far this season, they've averaged just over 1 goal per game, I do think they've been quite a bit of fun to watch at times, particularly Eze and Zaha, when they do have that link up going on between themselves. Eze, since his QPR days, always been a player who I've been really fond of, and good to see him flourishing in the Premier League. Coming in 14th place, we then have James Ward-Prowse of Southampton, coming in with 41 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 3.15 per 90. He's got 2 goal contributions to his name this far into the season with 1 goal and 1 assist, and it does feel like each season that goes by, Ward-Prowse becomes more and more important to this Southampton side. He'll be absolutely massive in terms of their survival bid once again this season, and you'd imagine the majority or a lot of those shot creating actions will have come from set piece situations and balls in from in and around the edge of the box. Next then we have Brentford's Mathias Jensen coming in with 41 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 3.88 per 90. Always seen Jensen as quite a tidy operator on the ball. He's got 3 goal contributions so far this season with 1 goal and 2 assists. Obviously, quite a bit was made about Brentford coming into this season. Where would those creative sparks come from without Christian Eriksen this time around? But interestingly enough, Brentford have actually averaged more goals per 90 so far this season than they did throughout the entirety of last season. I take the point that there have been a couple of batterings in there as well, recently to the likes of Aston Villa and Newcastle, but generally speaking, Brentford have gone about their business well so far this season. In 12th place, we then have West Ham United's Declan Rice coming in with 43 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 3.31 per 90. Rice is so good, and to be honest, I was probably one of those people about 12 or 18 months ago of underrating Rice a little bit and not fully appreciating what his ceiling actually could be. I especially think that at the start of his career, Rice was maybe a little bit misprofiled because he played a little bit at the back. A lot of people saw him as just an out-and-out defensive midfielder, but that takes away from so much of what he's good at and what he's been doing well for West Ham this season, and the creative numbers massively back that up. Coming in 11th place, we then have Jack Harrison of Leeds United with 44 shot creating actions so far this season at an average of 4.43 per 90. I always feel like Harrison goes somewhat under the radar, but his underlying numbers for Leeds this season have been really promising. 4 goal contributions up until this point with 1 goal and 3 assists. His current contract situation is an interesting one with Leeds at the moment as well. His current deal runs until 2024, and there have been some murmurings of some potential interest from Newcastle, which I thought was interesting. Coming in at the halfway mark, we then have Demarai Gray of Everton coming in with 46 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 3.75 per 90. He's actually yet to get off the mark with an assist to his name so far this season, but all of his underlying numbers have been quite positive. 1.9 shots per game, 1.3 key passes and 1.1 successful dribbles per 90. Brighton's Pascal Gross then enters the list in 9th place with 46 shot creating actions so far this season at an average of 4.09 per 90. Now, I was quite interested to see who actually ranked as Brighton's most creative player from this season. Trossard's come up with some great moments. McAllister really grabbed a lot of headlines this season as well, but Gross, since arriving at the Amex, always puts up consistent numbers, and this season's been no different. Coming in 8th place, we then have James Maddison of Leicester City, also with 46 shot creating actions up until this point, but slightly higher per 90 than the other 2 players who were tied on this stat with 4.21 shot creating actions per 90. He's the second highest Englishman on today's list, and surely this merits a place in the England squad ahead of the World Cup. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case with Southgate in charge, but Maddison has been terrific in what has been really quite a topsy-turvy season for Leicester up until this point. 8 goal contributions in 11 matches is not to be sniffed at. In 7th place, we then have Mohamed Salah of Liverpool coming in with 47 shot creating actions so far this season at an average of 4 shot creating actions per 90. Now, this season hasn't been Salah's best. There's no debate around that. I think you could even argue the second half of last season was when the tail off began. But I don't know whether to pin this on Salah himself or the different role that he's been given within this Liverpool side. Obviously, his creative numbers have remained really quite consistent so far this season, but as a knock-on effect from that, he's not quite been getting in those same goal scoring positions as he was last season. His shots per game, for example, has massively decreased from last season's stats. He does have 7 goal contributions so far this season in the Premier League, 4 goals, 3 assists, but even that I think we consider as an underperformance from Mo Salah, given his lofty expectations that he set for himself since arriving at Anfield. Coming in 6th place, we then have Martinelli of Arsenal, coming in with 51 shot creating actions so far this season, an average of 4.58 per 90. Martinelli, undoubtedly one of the silkiest dribblers in the Premier League. Absolutely love the guy on the eye. He's absolutely brilliant to watch, and he's added end product to his game over these last 12 or 18 months now, which is great to see, and Arsenal flying high in the Premier League. Coming in 5th place, we then have Son Heung-min coming in with 52 shot creating actions at an average of 4.54 per 90. Now this is quite an interesting one because on the eye test, I don't think that Son has had a particularly great season up until this point. He obviously got that hat-trick against Leicester, but other than that hasn't scored in any other league match. Does have 2 assists to his name so far this season and is slightly ahead of Harry Kane in the creativity rankings within that Spurs side so far this season. Put some respect on Andreas Pereira's name because he's coming in on 4th on today's list with 53 shot creating actions so far this season. Perhaps one of the most underrated bits of business throughout the entirety of the summer transfer window was Fulham picking this guy up from Manchester United. 5 goal contributions across his opening 13 Premier League matches so far this season, 2.6 key passes per 90, 1.4 shots per 90 as well. Pereira's underlying numbers have been great, and on the eye test as well has absolutely passed it so far. Fulham have done really well to sort of rejig their midfield over the summer, add the adequate quality into it, and as things stand, they look a shoo-in to survive. Coming in 3rd place, we then have Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United, also with 53 shot creating actions so far this season with an average of 4.42 per 90. I feel like Bruno Fernandes has always been a little bit of a divisive player since moving over to Manchester United. He's definitely an opinion splitter in terms of watching him. Doesn't always pass the eye test, sometimes gives the ball away a little bit too much, but what can't be argued is his underlying creative numbers have always remained really consistent for Man United. Coming in 2nd place, we have Kieran Trippier of Newcastle United, who's created 56 shot creating actions so far this season at an average of 4.36 per 90. Now, Newcastle have been the best side in the Premier League when it comes to their defensive solidity, and Kieran Trippier has had a large role to play in that, but whilst also simultaneously being their most creative outlet as well, he's had an absolute worldie of a season up until this point, and I suppose his case for getting into the England squad massively boosted by the injuries to Kyle Walker and Reece James, but even regardless of those, I think he would have gone anyway, and right now I think he's a shoo-in for the England starting 11. But coming in to top the list in 1st place, we have Kevin De Bruyne, who's way out in front of anyone else with 71 shot creating actions so far this season, a ginormous 6.72 per 90, which is absolutely ridiculous, and it blows everyone else off the charts. Kevin De Bruyne, without a doubt, the best midfielder in world football right now, in my opinion. I'd argue top 2 creators in the world as well, along with Messi. There's really nothing that De Bruyne can't do, and paired with Haaland this season, we could be set for an assist record from him. But guys, there we have it. There was every Premier League club's most creative player from this season and how they go ahead and stack up against each other in terms of the numbers. If you would like to see any more Premier League content coming out on the channel, then do leave a like on today's video and do stick around and subscribe for some regular videos. Apart from that, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.